You know, it's funny. I think that there's a long tradition of people having jobs. I think that tradition is over. I think the model of walking up the corporate ladder is busted. And this notion that you have a job doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, if you work on the candy assembly line putting truffles in the box, that's a job.
Yeah.
But if you have almost any white-collar job, almost any job where you get access to the internet, almost any job where there isn't a list of what you do all day, you don't really have a job. You have an opportunity. And I've viewed my life for 25 years as just one more opportunity to poke the box, to try something out, to do a project. I think we live in project world. And there's lots of ways people can get a job like mine.
Mm-hmm.
It just means sticking with it for a long time before it starts to work.
But you didn't always do this. You sort of started on the corporate side and you evolved into other things, right? You tried a lot of things. You talk in your books about some of your successes and some of your failures, and that's sort of part of the process, right?
Sure. I mean, I've failed way more times than I've succeeded.
What are some of your failures?
Well, I invented the first videotaped aquarium and videotaped fireplace. So you could put a VHS tape in, and if you were really lonely and a loser, you could watch the fish go back and forth.
That was before they had the one that would play on your computer.
Exactly. And yeah, go ahead.
Always ahead of your time. Let me just say that.
Always ahead of my time. And so what happened was I went to American Airlines magazine and I said, let me run a full page ad. And if it sells, I'll pay it for everyone that sells. And if it doesn't, I won't pay anything. Yeah. And I ran the ad, and I had set in my mind a list of 30 orders. If I got 30 orders, I'd make the tape.
Yep.
And I got 24 orders. Threw in the towel, send everyone a nice gift, send them the money back.
Right.
And a week later, I got 8 more orders.
Oh.
And then I had to send those back. And you know, that's a failure. And I launched books that failed. I did a book called Email Addresses of the Rich and Famous. And Roger Ebert got really mad at me. And,
Right.
I made videotapes that didn't work and books that didn't work. My lesson was, if I fail more than you do, I win. Because built into that lesson is this notion that you get to keep playing. If you get to keep playing, that means you get to keep failing. And sooner or later, you're going to make it succeed. The people who lose are either the ones who don't fail at all and get stuck, or the ones who fail so big they don't get to play again.
I kind of feel, maybe just because I relate with this, that it kind of takes one to know one. And so I want to maybe get a little bit personal with you and talk about some of this, talk more about vulnerability, because it's not easy. And maybe I'm overgeneralizing, but generally I think for men, it's difficult to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there. I mean, we take risks. Sure, you know, we soldier through and do whatever, get bloody and beat up, but to show our sensitive side, and Brené Brown talks a lot about this too, where she says it's seen as a sign of weakness. So did you ever have a time where you struggled with this, being vulnerable? Talk to us about that.
Well, yeah, I think it's something I deal with every single day and have for a really long time. That part of what happens if you're going to be an entrepreneur or even a freelancer, someone dancing on the edge, is you're paying attention to the audience. You want to know if you're making a sale. You want to know if it's working. You're not just phoning it in.
Right.
So, you know, in the old days, it was one phone call a day could make or break your day. Now it's one email every 10 seconds could make or break your day, right? So you have to decide first, are you open to letting the world have at your work?
Yeah.
Well, 17 books in, I think I am. 4,800 blog posts in, I'm sort of hooked on this.
Yeah.
Then the question is, what are you going to do with it when it comes back? Because it does come back. You touch people and they touch you back. So I have no comments on my blog. I don't read my reviews on Amazon. And the reason is self-preservation. It has nothing to do with vulnerability because I've put it into the world.
Yeah.
But I realized I'd never met an author who said, you know, Seth, I read all my 1-star reviews on Amazon and now my writing is a lot better. Right?
Yeah.
That's just not what happens.
Yeah.
So those don't exist. If someone sends me an anonymous email, I'm going to delete it. But if someone, and there's thousands of people who I have some sort of digital connection with, has some feedback on something I've done, I'm going to listen to it and I'm open to it and there's an exchange that goes on. And more important, millions of people are talking to each other about my work. You have to be open to that. You have to be ready for that to happen. I am not saying you need to become some magical little echo chamber, and that's why I don't use Twitter, because I realized if I got sucked into Twitter, it's like playing tennis with 150 people at a time. You hit the ball once and then a whole bunch of balls come back. You'll never be able to keep up with that.
Yeah.
So part of this discipline is not becoming J.D. Salinger and living isolated in a cabin, but figuring out how to be in the world, learn enough from the world that your stuff gets better, but continue to make things, continue to put these ideas into the world. I want to add one last thing on that topic, because it's something I've thought about a lot. I was really fortunate before his illness, and then when he passed away, I got to be on stage once with Zig Ziglar, one of my teachers. And it was 10,000, 12,000 people actually it's more than that, in a big stadium in Milwaukee. And backstage I said, so tell me, Zig, what do you do about that guy in the third row who's asleep? Like, because I'm standing up there, and I've flown halfway across the country, and I've practiced this thing, and that guy, he's asleep, or he's not paying attention.
Yeah.
I said, and Zig, I'm giving him everything I've got. I'm aiming all my photons and tachyons at him, and he's just not responding. And I can't do Zig's voice anymore, but Zig turned to me and he said, it's not for him. It's that woman sitting next to him on the edge of her seat, the one who's came a long way to hear you speak, the one who's listening to what you're saying and is going to do something. It's for her.
Yeah.
Don't take it away from her and give it to this guy. He doesn't deserve it. It's for her. And once we learn to shun the non-believers, once we learn to be comfortable enough to say, it's not for you, then we free ourselves up, because no one can make something for everyone. No one. There's no product that everyone wants. So you can either spend all your time trying to get the last person to like you, or you can say, I'm sorry, it's not for you. I'll go talk to these guys instead. Thank you, Brian. Brian is persistent and generous and intelligent and a real a mensch and a pleasure to work with. So thank you, Brian. All right, so I want to start by asking you a pretty serious question. I don't want you to answer it out loud, but I want you to answer it honestly to yourself. I want you to think really hard as we get started. And the question is really simple. Are you a genius? Anyone recognize this guy? This is the most famous, in Australia, talented, over-the-top sportsman who ever lived. His name was Donald Bradman. That chart at the top shows how good Donald Bradman was at cricket compared to everyone else. He was 3 times better at cricket than Michael Jordan was at basketball. He was 4 times better at cricket than Tiger Woods was at golf. This guy was the greatest cricket player who ever lived. On average, the rest of the top 50 would get about 50 runs. He got 99. 5 standard deviations higher than the norm. Here's the newsflash. You are not Donald Bradman. You will never be the Donald Bradman of anything. So stop letting the lizard brain tell you you're not good enough. Yeah, none of us are as good as Donald Bradman. That's okay. You will never play the clarinet as well as Benny Goodman. That's okay, because what we're really looking for is passion, right? That what really matters is being willing to stand up and make it happen, to ship. This idea of shipping, of getting it out the door, is so much more powerful than it used to be. Because it used to be that there were all these people who could say, no, it's not ready. And all these people used to say, no, we have to wait. But now it's so easy to get to market that shipping is what matters. Steve McConnell wrote a book. He used to work at Microsoft about the science of software. And what the book says is the typical software product runs late. Duke Nukem, 8 years late before they finally canceled the video game for this reason. Here's what happens. You come up with a cool idea and there's only 1 or 2 people on the team. And things are going really great. The amount of thrashing is really low because everyone knows what's going on. And then you get sort of a lot going on and more people come to the meetings. And then you get more people coming to the meetings and the CEO shows up and says, wait a minute, we have to redo this. I hate this interface. And so you're going back here. And as it gets closer and closer to ship date, more and more people want to weigh in. And then the lawyers come like here. And they say, oh boy, the lizard is freaking out. What Steve McConnell says is ship on time by thrashing at the beginning.
that if you thrash early, if you get all the ideas on Post-its before you start putting it into Photoshop and eventually into HTML, your website will be great. But if you don't show the website to the CEO until the day before it goes live because she's too busy, your website's never going to go live. This takes enormous discipline because this is scary and the lizard hates this. Hates it a lot. So David Rakoff has this great little essay. He was at the movies, and there was almost no one there. And he's sitting there, and this woman, this well-dressed woman, comes down, passes 8 seats, walks right up to him, and says, "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" And she wasn't pointing to the seat next to him, she was pointing to his seat. "Is this seat taken?" And he almost burst into tears. Because it's so easy to look at your job or your passion or whatever it is that you're spending all day on and realize you're taking up the seat, right? That the question I want to ask you is, do you do your work because you got to, it's an obligation, or is it an opportunity? Is it a platform for you to do art? If it's a platform for you to do art, then you can say in every moment, in every exchange, what do I do in this 3 minutes that makes me earn my whole day's pay? What's the scary insight that I come up with? The thing that has nothing to do with a map. And so if we think about these things of art and making a difference and shipping, all of a sudden, the economy feels a lot better, right? Because if all we're looking at in the economy is, please give me a job just like my last one, but for more money, and please tell me what to do, and please reassure me that everything is going to be okay, well then of course it feels like this. It's over. But if we look at the economy and say, you know what? There's this platform here like nothing has ever been before. Right? A platform that's got nothing in it but opportunity. So here's the question. I want you to think hard before you answer it. And I don't want you to say anything, I just want you to do something. If the answer to this question is yes, stand up. Bravo. Bravo. Have a seat. Thank you for standing up. So, for those of you who like to take notes, for those of you who want a map, here it is. This is what I need from you. This is what the world needs from you. This is what your family needs from you. This is what your boss needs from you. And if these don't sound hard to you, then you're not telling yourself the truth. Because there are other people who are working harder at this than you are. Right? So that's where it ends. Where it ends is it's all up to you. That the success of the next generation, including you, including your kids, is going to come down to one thing. Are you a linchpin? Are you doing work that matters? Go do it. Thank you so much.
How do we push through the resistance? You talked about the resistance a lot. Give us some tips about how to, this is a mental game, right?
Over our shoulders are many copies of Steve Pressfield's book, The War of Art, and the sequel, which I was lucky enough to publish, Do the Work. And Steve named that voice in our head, the resistance. It's the thing that gives us writer's block. It's the thing that can turn you into a shriveling heap of jelly.
It's the fight or flight.
Right. But you cannot push through it. That's a mistake. It doesn't go away. What it does is it becomes someone you can dance with. That's the distinction. So I've been backstage with some extraordinary people. The best ones get nervous before they go on stage. It doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. If you're waiting for it to go away, you're going to wait forever. What you do is say, oh, I feel this and I'm about to go on stage, and I'm about to ship it. That, as we talked about with the marathon, you can't make the tired go away, but you can learn to put it somewhere.
Interesting. Yeah, Adam Grant has a book out on creativity. He talks about turning that anxiety into anticipation or a looking forward to.
Correct.
It's a shifting.
Correct. And so I don't believe there are geniuses. If I'm a genius, you're a genius, we're all geniuses, or no one is. What I do believe is there are people who know how to dance with that feeling because of cultural reasons, because of who their parents were because of something, and they start pulling a thread. And if we look at the earliest work of all the people we say we admire, right? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's early work was super sloppy and expensive and ended in litigation. That the first versions of AOL were dumb and the management didn't know what they were doing. I mean, go down the list of any business you want, any nonprofit you want. It never starts well, but it begins. And then we pull the thread and we pull the thread. And as we're pulling the thread, we're getting better at our craft. And the only way to get good at our craft is to do our craft, not to study our craft.
Are we talking about emotional intelligence? Is that what this is about?
Well,
being able to put certain emotions in certain places?
I think that one of the things that they teach kids at good schools is this idea of metacognition, which means thinking about thinking, which means instead of having a tantrum, say, I feel like I'm going to have a tantrum. That if you can do that, you have a chance to let your executive function kick in.
Right.
And what we know is that the executive function is the thing that separates winners and losers now. Is when cool-headed, calm people look at their alternatives, they make better decisions. And what do we do for a living? We make change. And how do we make change? We make decisions. That's what we make now. And if you're making it with this instinctual thing, then why are you surprised you're not very good at it?
Right. Or people don't want to work with you.
Exactly, which is a version of not being good at it.
So I'll tell a quick backstory. Actually, this happened to me. You expressed...
What a great story, yeah.
Well, you expressed this to me, and I remember the words that you said to me. So we had, in Orange County, California, Southern California, we had about 1,000 people in this gigantic amphitheater. And Seth was about to go on stage in about 5 or 10 minutes, and I remember you actually saying, I feel frustrated that we're not going on yet. There was some delay happening, and we were trying to get you mic'd up, and all kinds of running around was happening backstage. And when you said, I feel frustrated, I thought, uh-oh, this is code for something else. This is code for, like, hurry up, get with it, or, like, I'm out of here.
No, it wasn't.
Well, anyway. So in that very moment, actually, a catastrophe happened. So, everything was hanging on your keynote, and we had this big screen, and like I said, everyone's in their seats, and we can hear the people coming, and this giant projector which was set up. Someone had not secured it, and it had fallen off face first down to the stage, broken into 20 different pieces.
So to be clear, it weighed 100 pounds, and it was this big, and if it had hit someone, they would have died. That's what the level we're talking about is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it shattered into 20 pieces, and because you had been so prepared and obviously been thinking through a presentation that was picture and slide heavy, not, there's no words on your slides. I think you felt some anxiety at that moment.
Yeah, but I was also really impressed at the way you responded to it, because you did. Zig used to talk about the difference between react and respond. If you go to the doctor and she says, good news, you're responding to the medicine, it's different than if she says, bad news, you're reacting to the medicine.
That's
and
true.
You responded, you didn't react, and that saved the entire evening.
I'm told often I may have missed my calling in life. Like, a lot of people think, because I get more calm, and in fact my wife really gets on me sometimes for shifting into slower gear when things go wrong. But like, maybe I should have been like an airline pilot or something. Like, attention everyone, I'm sorry to say that we're headed down nosedive.
That's right, bye.
Yeah. No, I get really calm in stressful situations.
Well, it was great.
Well, it worked out. But yeah, whether you call it emotional intelligence or you talking about being responsive versus reactive, I think that's important business lessons.
But the cool takeaway here is if it's intelligence, you can learn it. And that changes everything. It's not about talent. It's not about gifts. It's about choosing to learn how to be good at it. And that's why I'm so optimistic. Because we could choose to ship our best work. We can choose to pick ourselves. We can choose to care more about other people. We can choose to see the world as it is. These are choices. And if we can acknowledge that we're making a choice that gets us into a corner, that gets us feeling down, that gets us rejected, well, then we can make a different choice. And the biggest marketing lesson I will share with you tonight is 7 words. People like us do things like this. And that is what the definition of culture is, right? So Chelsea and her partner are here. They make the most beautiful stationery in America. It's not for everybody. It's for almost nobody. But the people it's for are people who know that when they send out a thank you note on this letterhead or a wedding invitation, it will go to people who say, oh, you're people like me, because people like us buy stuff like this. And the same thing's true when you're selling real estate, and the same thing's true when we're trying to run for something. So the opportunity here is not to be a beleaguerer and not to shame another human, but in fact to shame behavior and to say people like us don't stand for behavior like this from you or from me or from anybody else. And that's an identity thing. That's story of us. That's not story of him. And going back to that again and again and investing your effort in how you can tell that narrative in a way that doesn't get lost in the noise, because the daily poll numbers are not nearly as important as the long-term arc of what each of us are trying to do.